After covering the rent with my emergency fund because my wife forgot to pay it again, I came home with gas station dinner and a headache. She looked at the food and said, "Wow, you really know how to make poverty taste worse." Then she threw it in the trash and said, "Try again tomorrow, idiot." That was the night I realized I wasn't a husband, just a wallet with a pulse. This morning, she called me crying and begging me. You know the type, the sad sacks who let themselves get walked all over until they finally snap. But here I am at 2:47 a.m. sitting in my car in a 24-hour grocery store parking lot because I can't stomach going back to my own house tonight. Funny how fast your life can turn into a Reddit post. It started with the rent again. This was the third time in 6 months that Skylar forgot to pay it, despite the fact that she doesn't work and literally has one financial responsibility, transferring money from our joint account to the landlord's payment portal. A task that takes approximately 90 seconds. I found out when my landlord texted me this morning about the late fee, $65 down the drain, just like the $130 from the previous two forgets. Money we definitely can't afford to waste right now, but whatever. I'm used to it. I called Skylar from where I was already pulling a 12-hour shift because we're short-staffed, which is corporate speak for we don't want to hire enough people. She gave me the usual song and dance about how she got distracted, how the payment portal is super confusing, and how she just has so much on her plate right now. She's been unemployed for 14 months. Her plate consists of TikTok and our Netflix account. So, I transferred the rent money from my emergency fund. Again, the emergency fund that used to have almost $8,000 in it 2 years ago and now has a whopping $712 because apparently my wife forgetting basic adult responsibilities has become our most common emergency. Fast forward to me driving home after my shift. My head is pounding like somebody's using my skull for drumming practice. I'm exhausted. I haven't eaten since my sad desk lunch at 11 o'clock. So, I stop at the gas station near our apartment and grab some of those pre-made sandwiches, chips, and 2 bottles of soda. Not gourmet, but it'll do. I walk through the door at 8:23 p.m. to find Skylar on the couch, scrolling through her phone. The apartment's a mess. Dishes piled in the sink from what I'm guessing is at least 3 days ago. The trash overflowing. The laundry I asked her to please just throw in the washer still sitting in the hamper. But whatever. I'm too tired to fight about it. I put the gas station food on the coffee table and mumble something about dinner. Skylar looks up from her phone, glances at the food, and then says it. Wow, you really know how to make poverty taste worse. I freeze, like literally cannot move. Did she seriously just say that? After I just covered our rent after I worked a 12-hour shift, after she contributed exactly $0 to our household today. Before I can even respond, she sweeps her arm across the coffee table, knocking the food onto the floor. The soda explodes across our carpet. Try again tomorrow, idiot. That's when something inside me just clicked. Like when you've been trying to solve a puzzle and suddenly all the pieces fall into place and you see the whole picture. I've been married for 4 years, but I've never been a husband. I'm a wallet with a pulse. I've paid for everything since day one. In the beginning, it was because Skylar was between jobs. Then it was because she was finding her passion. Then it was because the job market was so competitive right now. Then it was because she was dealing with burnout. The excuses changed, but the reality stayed the same. My paycheck in, nothing out. Meanwhile, her personal spending hasn't slowed down one bit. New clothes, expensive skincare, constant food delivery because cooking is so draining, and every time I bring it up, I'm the bad guy. I'm financially abusive for asking where our money is going. I'm controlling for suggesting a budget. I'm unsupportive for questioning why she needs another $300 pair of shoes, standing there watching the soda seep into our carpet. That I'll definitely be the one cleaning. Something in me just died or maybe woke up. I don't know. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just turned around, walked out, got in my car, and drove away. Left her sitting there with her phone and her attitude and her mess. I drove aimlessly for a while, then ended up here in this parking lot, writing this post on my phone because I have literally nobody to talk to about this. Skylar made sure of that over the years. My friends were losers. My family was toxic. Funny how everyone who might have had my back somehow became problematic. My phone's been blowing up for the past hour. Text after text from first angry. Where TF are you? Then manipulative. I'm scared. Please come home. Then gaslighting. You're overreacting. It was just a joke. And now the tearful apologies. I'm so sorry, baby. Please come home. I didn't mean it. I haven't responded to any of them. Instead, I've been doing math. Cold, hard math. Over the past 4 years, I've paid approximately $192,000 toward our living expenses, bills, and her personal spending. In return, she's contributed roughly $18,000 from the brief period she's worked. And that's just the financial side. I won't even get into the emotional labor, the housework I do despite working full-time, the constant walking on eggshells, the friends I've lost, the family events I've missed, the dreams I've put on hold. I think I've been in denial for 4 years, telling myself things would get better when she found the right job, when we had more money, when she was less stressed. When? But tonight, watching her throw perfectly good food in the trash while calling me an idiot, I finally saw the truth. There is no when. This is it. This is who she is. This is who we are. Or rather, this is who we were. Because I'm done being a walking ATM tomorrow, I'm going to open a new bank account at a different bank. I'm going to redirect my direct deposit. I'm going to call a lawyer. And I'm going to figure out what divorce looks like when you've spent 4 years being someone's financial life support. I don't know what she's going to do when the money stops. Probably call her parents who supposedly are so terrible. Yet, she has no problem taking their birthday checks. Maybe actually get a job or find another sucker to fund her lifestyle. Not my problem any. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. Sitting in my car at almost 3 o'clock in the morning, planning my exit strategy from a marriage that I'm pretty sure has been one-sided from the start. The wild thing is I actually feel relieved, like I can breathe for the first time in years. Has anyone else been through something similar? Any advice on protecting myself financially during a divorce? Because something tells me that when Skylar realizes her meal ticket is walking out the door, things are going to get ugly. Fast. Update 1. First off, I want to say thanks for the support on my last post. Waking up to hundreds of comments from people who've been where I am was both validating and depressing. Validating because I'm not crazy. Depressing because apparently there are thousands of us walking ATMs out there. It's been 16 days since the gas station dinner incident. 16 days of what I can only describe as financial warfare conducted with spreadsheets instead of weapons. The morning after I posted, I went straight to a credit union across town and opened new accounts. The lady at the desk kept giving me these concerned looks as I mumbled through my explanation of why I needed accounts my wife couldn't access. When I finally stopped rambling, she just slid a form across the desk and said she'd seen this before. No judgment, no question, just efficiency. That's when it hit me. This happened so often they have a process. I redirected my direct deposit, which thankfully wouldn't hit until the next pay period. Left just enough in our joint account to cover immediate bills. Then I spent 3 days making spreadsheets, not just basic budgets. I went full forensic accountant on our marriage. 4 years of transactions sorted into categories with little notes about what each was for. The results were illuminating. In the last year alone, Skylar had spent $11,642 on clothes, makeup, and what I generously categorized as personal items. That's almost $1,000 a month on stuff while I worked overtime and ate ramen for lunch to make ends meet. And those ends weren't even meeting. We had $8,300 in credit card debt. I didn't even know about until I dug through all our accounts. Turns out those forgot to pay moments extended to a lot more than just rent. I printed everything color-coded with little sticky tabs. Because if I was going to blow up my marriage, I was going to do it with properly organized evidence. For the record, seeing 4 years of financial abuse laid out in Excel does weird things to your mental state. I alternated between wanting to throw up and wanting to high-five myself for finally seeing the truth. When I finally went home 3 days after the incident, Skylar had transformed. The apartment was spotless. She'd made my favorite dinner. She'd even put on makeup, the expensive stuff she saves for when she wants something. The manipulation was so obvious, it was almost cute, like watching a toddler try to lie about eating cookies while their face is covered in chocolate. I sat at our kitchen table, placed my binder of financial evidence between us, and started talking. Calmly explained that I knew about the credit card debt, that I'd redirected my paycheck, that I'd calculated exactly how much of our joint expenses I would cover going forward, and exactly how much she needed to contribute. For the first 30 seconds, she just stared like her brain couldn't process the fact that I was actually standing up for myself. Then came the waterworks, then the accusations, then the promises to change, the classic manipulation trifecta. I'd seen it so many times before that it almost felt scripted. But this time, I didn't fold. This time, I had my binder of truth and enough righteous anger to power a small city. When she realized crying wasn't working, she switched tactics. Started bringing up how her friend Lindsay had just gone through a rough patch with her husband and they'd worked it out. How marriage is about supporting each other through hard times. How she'd get a job tomorrow, if that would make me happy. I just flipped to page 23 of my binder. The page with all her previous promises to find work, neatly dated and categorized by excuse. That's when things got ugly. She called me every name in the book. Said I was financially abusing her by controlling the money. Said I'd always been cheap and pathetic and she'd only stayed with me out of pity. And you know what the weirdest part was? Hearing her say all that stuff out loud actually made me feel better. Like she was finally being honest for the first time in our marriage. I moved into the spare room that night, set up what my buddy Lawson calls a depression nest. Just a mattress on the floor, my laptop, and enough clothes to get by. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And for the first time in years, I slept through the night without waking up anxious about money. The next week was like living with a stranger who was cycling through personalities trying to find one that would work on me. One day she'd be sweet and apologetic, making coffee and asking about my day. The next she'd be cold and distant, slamming doors and sighing dramatically. Then she'd be practical, sitting down with job search sites and asking for my help with her resume. I stayed polite but distant. Answered direct questions with minimal responses. Didn't take the bait when she tried to start fights. The internet calls it grey rocking, becoming so boring and unresponsive that the person loses interest in trying to manipulate you. Turns out it works. But the real changes started happening when the money ran out about a week after I redirected my paycheck. Her credit card got declined while trying to order delivery. I was in the spare room but could hear her on the phone trying different cards, getting increasingly frustrated. The next day, she tried to buy something online and apparently had the same problem. That afternoon, I got a calendar notification that our car insurance was due. Something she'd always handled with our joint money, except now there wasn't enough in that account. Reality was setting in, one declined transaction at a time. She cornered me in the kitchen 2 nights ago, demanding to know what I'd done. I calmly explained that I was now paying exactly 50% of our shared expenses. Rent, utilities, groceries, and car insurance. Nothing more, nothing less. If she wanted spending money, she'd need to contribute. For a minute, I thought she might actually hit me. Her face went through this fascinating transformation. Shock, disbelief, rage, calculation, and finally defeat. All in about 15 seconds. Yesterday morning, I woke up to find a note on the kitchen counter saying she was going to stay with her friend Aurora for a few days to think about things. She took her laptop, makeup, and enough clothes for a week. And you know what? The apartment feels bigger somehow. Like her anger and entitlement had been taking up physical space that I can now breathe in. I'm not naive enough to think this is over. Skylar isn't the type to give up her meal ticket without a fight. But for the first time in our marriage, I'm not afraid of that fight. I've got my binder. I've got my separate accounts. And most importantly, I've got confirmation that I'm not crazy for expecting an adult to act like an adult. My lawyer, a straight-shooting woman who reminds me of my no-nonsense aunt, says I'm in a good position. We're renters, no kids. And while it sucks that we have joint debt, at least we don't own property together. She's drawing up separation papers that split our debts proportional based on who incurred them. which means Skylar is about to learn that all those spa days and clothes weren't actually free. I know I should feel sad. This is my marriage ending after all. But mostly, I feel like I've been carrying a backpack full of rocks for 4 years and finally set it down. My shoulders literally feel lighter. Aurora texted me this morning saying Skylar wants to meet and work things out. Apparently, she's been crying non-stop and realizes what she's done. I agreed to meet her tomorrow at a coffee shop, neutral territory where she can't throw anything like my dinner or scream without embarrassing herself. I have a feeling this is going to be the performance of a lifetime. Oscar-worthy tears, promises of change, maybe even some strategic cleavage. But this time, I'm going in with clear eyes and an exit strategy. We will update after the meeting. Either way, I'm not going back to being an ATM with a pulse. That version of me died the night my dinner hit the trash can. Finally, update. Well, it happened. She ordered a $12 latte. Might seem like a weird detail to fixate on, but watching Skylar casually drop $12 on a fancy coffee while simultaneously crying about how broke she was pretty much summed up our entire relationship in one perfect moment. The coffee shop meeting went exactly as I predicted. She showed up looking like she'd just walked off the set of a sad music video. Slightly smudged mascara, hair artfully tousled, wearing that blue sweater I once said brought out her eyes. The manipulation was so obvious it was almost impressive. For 2 straight hours, she cycled through her greatest hits. Tears, promises, guilt trips, and when all else failed, vague hints about how attractive her coworker Gage finds her. All carefully calculated to make me either feel like a hero who could save her or a villain who was destroying her life. For years ago it would have worked. Hell, for weeks ago it might have worked. But sitting across from her with my lawyer's advice fresh in my mind and 16 days of peaceful sleep in my system, all I saw was a con artist whose favorite mark was finally wise to the game. I slid the separation agreement across the table, told her she had 2 choices. Sign it and we'd handle this like adults, or fight me and spend whatever money she had left on legal fees. The agreement was more than fair. I even offered to take on 60% of our joint credit card debt despite my spreadsheets clearly showing she'd caused most of it. She didn't even read it, just pushed it back and said we could work through this if I'd just stop being so petty about money. Classic Skylar treating a financial nuclear bomb like it was a minor disagreement about what show. I left her sitting there still talking about how we could start fresh. Walked out mid-sentence. Felt like I was in a movie, except instead of dramatic music, there was just the awkward shuffling of coffee shop patrons trying not to stare at the crying woman. That was 37 days ago. Since then, life has been chaotic, but improving. It's like I've been detoxing from a 4-year relationship addiction. The first few weeks were brutal. Nightmares, second-guessing myself, staring at my phone, wondering if I should just call and say I'd changed my mind. But then came the unexpected plot twist. Aurora reached out to me. Turns out Skylar's friend wasn't quite as supportive as Skylar had hoped. After 2 weeks of listening to Skylar's version of events and watching her blow through Aurora's food and hospitality without contributing, Aurora started asking questions. Then she started noticing discrepancies. Then she looked me up on social media and messaged me. We met for coffee. I got regular drip, $5, because I'm still repairing the financial damage of my marriage. Aurora sheepishly admitted that Skylar had been bad-mouthing me to everyone for years, painting herself as this long-suffering wife supporting her loser husband through career struggles. The complete inverse of reality. But the best part, Aurora had receipts. Screenshots of Skylar bragging in their friend group chat about how she trained me to cover all the bills while she kept her money for herself. Pictures of shopping sprees captioned with "hubby doesn't know lol." Texts complaining about having to pretend to look for jobs to keep me off her back. 4 years of my marriage explained in toxic text messages. I didn't even feel angry seeing them, just validated. Like finally getting confirmation that you're not actually going crazy. Aurora apologized for believing Skylar's lies. Said she'd noticed red flags but had dismissed them because Skylar was so convincing. Then she did something I didn't expect. Offered to be a witness if things got ugly in the divorce. Said she couldn't stand by and watch someone get used like that. Turns out not everyone's moral compass is as broken as my soon-to-be ex-wife's. Speaking of Skylar, Reality hit her like a freight train about 3 weeks after our coffee shop meeting. Her credit cards were maxed. Her parents, who I later learned were not the monsters she described, just normal people tired of funding her lifestyle, refused to send more money. And Aurora had finally asked her to start contributing rent or find somewhere else to stay. That's when the phone calls started. 3, 4, 5 times a day. Voicemails alternating between sobbing apologies and vicious threats. Texts ranging from, "I miss you so much, baby," to, "You're going to die alone and miserable." The emotional whiplash was exhausting. But my lawyer had prepared me. Document everything, respond minimally, and never engage with the crazy. So, that's what I did. Then came the day I'd been quietly dreading, moving day. I'd found a small studio apartment across town. Nothing fancy, but it's clean, has decent water pressure, and most importantly, has my name alone on the lease. I arranged to pick up my things while Skylar was supposedly at a job interview, her first in months, conveniently scheduled right when she needed rent money. Except she wasn't at an interview. She was waiting in our apartment, sitting on the couch like some final boss in a video game I never wanted to play. For a weird moment, I almost laughed. Of course, she'd ambush me. Of course, she'd make this harder than it needed to be. Of course, she was wearing that blue sweater again. My buddy Holden, who'd come to help me move, immediately tensed up beside me. He'd heard all the stories, but was finally seeing the Skylar show live for the first time. What followed was 2 of the most uncomfortable hours of my life. Skylar oscillating between helping pack dishes, weird, and accidentally dropping things I cared about, predictable, making small talk with Holden like we were all friends hanging out, extremely uncomfortable, asking pointed questions about my new place that I deliberately kept vague. The whole time, I kept waiting for the explosion, the screaming, the thrown objects, the dramatic declaration, but it never came. Instead, as I carried out the last box, she handed me an envelope and said she'd been doing a lot of thinking. Inside was the signed separation agreement. No changes, no negotiation, just her signature on every flagged line. I stood there staring at it like it might explode in my hands. After weeks of fighting me on every point, she'd just given in. It didn't compute. That night, as I sat on my new mattress on the floor of my empty studio, déjà vu from my depression nest in the spare room, I got a text from Aurora that explained everything. Apparently, Skylar had met some guy at a bar, some guy with a nice watch and a fancy car who thought her stories about. Her controlling ex were just so sympathetic. Some guy who'd already offered to let her stay at his place until she got back on her feet. She'd found herself a new ATM. And suddenly divorcing me as quickly as possible was in her best interest. I should have felt relieved, and part of me did. But another part felt this weird impulse to warn the poor bastard, to show him my spreadsheets and screenshots to save him from what I'd just escaped. I didn't, though. Some lessons you just have to learn the hard way. The weeks since have been strangely normal. I go to work. I come home to my small but tidy studio. I'm slowly rebuilding my emergency fund up to $1,012. Now I'm learning to cook beyond my basic bachelor skills. I downloaded a budgeting app that doesn't make me want to throw my phone across the room. The divorce was finalized last week. No drama, no court appearance, just paperwork, and a sense of surreal emptiness when I saw the word dissolved stamped across what was once the most important commitment of my life. I wish I could end this with some profound wisdom, but the truth is I'm still processing, still having moments where I reach for my phone to text her about something funny. Still waking up confused when I don't feel her on the other side of the bed. 4 years of habits don't disappear overnight, but I'm also finding parts of myself that had been dormant for years. I rejoined my old gaming group. I'm talking to my sister again. I bought concert tickets without calculating how many ramen dinners I'd need to eat to offset the cost. Last night, I ordered takeout. Not the fancy kind, just basic Chinese food from the place down the street. And as I sat on my second-hand couch, eating orange chicken straight from the container while watching YouTube on my laptop, I had this moment of perfect ordinary contentment. No one was judging my food choice. No one was spending money we didn't have. No one was making me feel small for existing. I wasn't rich or particularly successful or even fully healed, but I was free. And in case you're wondering, yes, I tipped the delivery guy 20%. Because some of us understand the value of other people's work. That's it for updates unless something truly crazy happens. Thanks for listening. Who knew that gas station dinner would end up changing my entire life? Ready for voiceover? I've kept the exact wording, pauses, and emotional flow intact, with only minor fixes for obvious typos like mumble, A000 showed show, part of me. Part of me did, and gaming. Gaming group to make it read naturally when spoken. No channel name was mentioned in the original, so nothing to replace with once loyal. If you want any pacing notes added like pause or emphasis, let me know.